That piece that's missing in modern day healthcare is that human connection. Humanity, human beings existing, suffering, and thriving collectively. More specifically, people as patients being treated with kindness, respect, and understanding. Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. One of my very favorite things about being a podcaster is crossing paths with other incredible podcasters. If you love this show, especially when I share about my experience with healthcare burnout and recovery, you're going to want to check out the podcast, Burnout, What I've Learned So Far, hosted by my friend Meg Letty. Meg is a former CT surgery PA turned advocate for healthcare provider wellness. Turn in to hear how she recovered from burnout and integrated well-being into her life to create a life of dreams, not nightmares. Add Burnout, What I Have Learned So Far with Meg Letty to your podcast queue to start your journey to wellness and healing today. Hey there. So I figured out what we are missing in healthcare. Culturally, we've gotten it wrong in recent years. Did you ever watch that show, The Little House on the Prairie? It was about that Western family drama. It was maybe set in like the 1800s. I'm not 100% sure what year it actually was set in, but I was a huge fan of Laura Ingalls Wilder, and I watched a ton of those episodes as a kid. Well, in case you haven't seen the show, as you might imagine, in very rural Midwest in, say, 1890, healthcare was a very different thing than what healthcare is now. And honestly, probably healthcare now is very different than it was in 1990, for that matter. Back then, a physician would make an actual house call, like ride up on a horse with a special doctor bag to take care of whoever was sick or unwell at the actual house. Now, I think they did have an office in like the main street, probably next to like the saloon and the general store, that there was a doctor's office, but often the doctor made house calls. I cannot remember specifically what kind of ailments he came to treat, but I do remember that as a part of the show. But back then, and honestly not too long ago in modern medicine, also, a person would take care of another person. In fact, that person would probably take care of that entire family. In terms of modern healthcare, the delivery system, the healthcare system, the places that we work has become so much more about practicing defensive medicine, about tackling insurmountable documentation requirements and dealing with electronic health records, and less about specific people taking care of other people. That piece that's missing in modern day healthcare is that human connection. Humanity, human beings existing, suffering, and thriving collectively. More specifically, people as patients being treated with kindness, respect, and understanding. With the technological advancements, the way that computers and advanced imaging, with the Institution of Electronic Medical Records, with this new AI, templates, and the increasing chart burden, it's no longer a person sitting down in a room with another person just to see what's wrong and to see how they can make them better. So today, I want to highlight 3 ways that we can work together to bring humanity back into healthcare. I truly, deeply in my heart believe that this is something that is missing, but that we have the power to start to course correct and bring back more of that person to person interaction, more of that human touch when we take care of other people. So, first, compassion. The first way that we can bring humanity back into healthcare is by exercising compassion. Compassion literally means to suffer together. When I asked ChatGPT to define compassion, it told me that compassion is a fundamental human emotion characterized by a deep awareness of the suffering of others and a desire to alleviate or reduce that suffering. It goes on to describe the act of being compassionate as empathizing with others, emotions and struggles of others, all while feeling motivated to take action to help them. The bottom line, that sounds like a lot of the reason that we wanted to go into medicine in the first place. Am I right? Does compassion make a difference to our patients and in the care we provide? That is a great question, and I'm so glad that you asked. In fact, it does. Studies in Ireland, the US, and even in England showed that better patient satisfaction results from compassion from the healthcare provider. In fact, 87% of patients say that kindness is the most important thing that they take into consideration when they're choosing a clinician. The other options for patients to choose when they were surveyed was things like wait time, distance of the office from their home, and cost, which tells us that our patients care more about compassion and kindness than they do about how much it costs, than how long they wait, or how far they drive to see you. Studies also show that patients who have a clinician that showed them compassion during their visits had statistically significant less depression, anxiety, and psychological distress. Compassion also improves engagement and compliance with our patients. And each compassionate statement that a provider makes inside of an encounter helps to reduce anxiety in the patient. And those effects can last up to 6 months. One study showed that a compassionate oncologist is the one thing that most clearly predicts quality of life in an oncology patient, more than treatments, compliance, and which therapies are chosen. I know what you're thinking. Tracy, this all sounds great, but I don't have time for this compassion that you're talking about. I have patients waiting in another room. I have an in-basket full of results and patient questions, and I have 10 unsigned notes from yesterday. Well, I thought that you might say that. So guess what? It takes, on average, 40 seconds more in a patient visit to use more compassionate statements, body language, and markedly improve your interactions with patients so that they perceive you to be more compassionate, kind, and caring. So here are a few practical ways to improve your visit compassion and that interaction that you have with patients. First, body language. Doing things like taking the time to sit down in the room, leaning forward, looking patients in the eye, watching your arms. So no crossed arms, but an open posture, and asking compassionate questions and listening to the answers. Next up, avoiding I statements. Yes, during a visit, there are 2 or more people in this visit, you and the patient, and maybe friends or family of theirs. But I want you to really focus on making it about the patient. This seems so basic, but making it about them increases their perceived level of care. So be intentional and interested in their concerns. Do your best to answer questions. And within the bounds of the restraints that you have, take time to really listen to what they say. Next up, word choice matters. Sometimes we have to say no, whether it's saying no to an antibiotic for a viral infection or refusing a test that a patient was pushing for. Sometimes the evidence simply doesn't support us saying yes to their demands. But the way that we say no matters. Instead of using the phrase, you don't need X, it's just Y. So let's think of an example. You don't need antibiotics, it's just a viral infection. Opt to use language that highlights their suffering and identifies and doesn't minimize the problem. Instead of saying it's just a virus, say, I think this is a nasty virus, right? Instead of saying it's just a sprain, nothing's broken, you can say, the good news is it isn't a fracture, but I do think that you have a bad sprain. The treatment plan is XYZ, right? So using this to lead into how you're going to take care of them. Ultimately, compassion is an ingredient that's missing in a lot of our interactions with patients. It brings us back to that human-to-human connection, the reason that we went into medicine, that shared experience of suffering. Compassion helps us to meet patients where they are, to help relieve their pain, and to help them on their way to feeling them best selves again, to wellness and to health and to healing. Those things are all super important. We interrupt this broadcast with a very important announcement. You are not making enough money. Your practice and your physician do not understand the value you are adding to their patients, and therefore you aren't earning what you're worth. If in the past your requests for a raise have been met with one single word, no. If you're working more hours than ever and seeing more patients, but you're not making any more money and you're feeling pissed about it. If you feel like you've hit the ceiling of your income band, this guide is for you. I've compiled the 5 most costly and most common mistakes that PAs make when asking for a raise, and I've told you how to avoid them and what to do instead. Download your free guide at tracybingaman.com/mistakes. Next up, appreciation. So we know that thank yous go a long way. Whether it's a thank you for waiting to a patient when you are running behind, or a sincere appreciation expressed to your colleagues, nurses, and support staff. When we express gratitude, we create a positive feedback loop between ourselves and others. Those who we are taking the time to actively appreciate, they feel that appreciation, which can lead to enhanced patient-provider relationships, enhanced social bonds within our teams, and this results in an increased likelihood of reciprocal acts of kindness and support, both for patients and for staff. So think about using appreciation at the beginning and end of a shift or a visit, right? At the beginning of your shift or a day, you can greet those around you on your team and the support staff. At the end of the day or the shift, say an earnest thank you to those who helped throughout your time taking care of patients. You can do this for a patient too. At the beginning and end of their visit, you can say thank you for waiting, or thank you for coming in, or it's so nice to see you today. And then at the end, maybe you say like, thank you for trusting me with your care. Something that you are expressing that you are grateful that they have met you in this vulnerable position that they're in. The next way that you can use appreciation to improve patient care and help with humanity inside of healthcare is to use that appreciation or praise to help credential your team. So let's say you're working in the ICU, rounding on patients. Instead of saying, if you need anything, Stacy is your nurse today. You could say, today your nurse is Stacy. She's incredible. She's going to take great care of you, right? So you're building other people on your team up. It will credential your team. It will help that patient to feel like they are truly in the best hands and getting the best care. But your colleagues and nursing staff will really appreciate you propping them up and you helping them to have the authority to do what they need to do to help take care of that patient. And it could also really make them feel great about themselves. Next up, I want to talk about having people's back on your team and gossip. So gossip is pretty much the opposite of gratitude. So I know gossip exists within all social situations, and depending on your work culture, gossip may be commonplace. But saying things behind people's backs, specifically negative things, is essentially the opposite of appreciating those on your team. It's so important to have your teammates back. Take a hard look at whether you are one that is propagating a culture of gossip at work. This is something that's really been on my heart recently. At one point in my career, I had a sit down with one of my support staff, checking in on this new workflow that we were doing, and they had stepped into a new position. So we sat down, and during this meeting, this staff member, this team member expressed that they knew people were talking about them, and they shared that it was really bothering them. They said, I hear it. I sort of sense it. I know people are saying things that are maybe not super kind behind my back. And I just want you to know that like I realize that that's happening and it's affecting me. So my immediate response, if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, was defense. Once I sort of got over that, my more mature realization on self-reflection about this situation was that I was part of the problem. I was speaking about people behind their backs, and I was participating in office and interdepartmental gossip on a regular basis. I was like questioning whether I should put this in at all. And I probably previously would have been embarrassed to tell you that. But honestly, at this point, we're talking about humanity and healthcare. And I'm a person and I'm not perfect. And you already know this. I I really want this to be like, hey, I'm approachable and this is something that I've struggled with. So I was working on making this concerted effort to be, first of all, aware of the gossip that was happening around me, and then working to intentionally avoid participating in that gossip. And in doing that, I really was like, wow, I was gossiping a lot more than I realized when I was sort of on autopilot. At one point during that time, I was in a conversation with someone different who clearly was like gearing up to gossip. You know, that feeling when you're in the conversation, you're like, here it comes. They're going to say something about this other person. You probably know what they're going to say, and you probably know how they're going to say it. And you almost certainly know who they're going to say it about. And so we're sort of revving up, right? Revving up to gossip. And I said, I just wanted you to know, and I tried to say this in like a calm, diplomatic way. I recently made a policy that I'm only going to talk about other people and other situations if I'm actively trying to find a solution to a specific problem. So instead of talking about the person, I started talking about the problem. And I was only going to talk about the problem, not in a way that was like complaining or bad mouthing people, but if I truly wanted to solve the problem. Because sometimes we don't want to solve the problem, we just want to complain about the problem. I will still sometimes slip up and gossip, but by and large, I try to stick to that policy on an ongoing basis. Ultimately, the opposite of gossiping is to show that appreciation to your patients for entrusting you with their care, and for your colleagues, which includes not gossiping about people. And that's colleagues and patients. Try instead to focus on the problems and how to solve them instead of disparaging comments or negative things that are being said about patients or colleagues. Last but not least, in order to bring back humanity into healthcare, we need to be willing to be vulnerable. This one trips us up big time, as historically the culture of healthcare has emphasized things like evidence based medicine that we should practice like robots, without emotion and without showing any weakness whatsoever. But what we need is to remember that we are humans. And when we share that we're humans who have emotions, struggles, challenges, good and bad days, when we let people see that we are not perfect, not martyrs, and that we are not robots, we become more accessible and really, truly more real to our patients and colleagues alike. It can be easy in the day to day of practicing medicine to forget the vulnerability that our patients are showing us on any given day. Sometimes we have the opportunity and the ability to cultivate that relationship over time. And other times we're seeing patients for the very first time, potentially on their very worst day, when they are scared, hurting, in pain, or nervous, right? Most of those visits are for a complaint, and those things can terrify patients. And just the fact that they're coming in to see someone can make them feel very nervous and anxious. The amount of empathy and understanding, the kindness and respect we must extend to our patients in a short amount of time is huge. We work to make them feel comfortable enough to share things that are oftentimes embarrassing, painful, or bothersome. When we share our humanity and we let them know that we too are humans with this shared experience, that we have overlapping things that have happened to us, that have happened to them, we become more approachable to our patients. We can also lead by example in this vulnerability department. This is a shift that we have to make person by person, office by office, department by department, in order to create a tidal wave to remind those around us that we are people taking care of other people inside of medicine. We share our vulnerability with others when we share our challenges, when we bravely tell those around us that we are struggling with burnout, walking through health challenges, really bothered by a recent patient or family member or situation or diagnosis, or even simply that we're having a bad day or a good day. Humans have bad days, and we are all humans taking care of other humans. I'm encouraging you that in order to be humans, taking care of those other humans inside of the structure and the constraints of our current healthcare system, it's important to open up to those around you. Share who you truly are, your authentic self, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is okay to be a human, and that humanity is what's going to save us inside of healthcare. This wave of change to infuse humanity back inside of healthcare, it won't be swift. It's going to take time to get back to the basics of us being humans, taking care of other humans. Ultimately, humanity is the act of recognizing and appreciating human dignity. That's what each of us would want for ourselves as patients or a family member who is being cared for by someone else. We are swimming upstream with a downstream current that is the current healthcare system, fighting against things like templates that leave us 15 minutes for follow-up visits and require 94 clicks in order to document each visit in our electronic health record notes. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to solve that dichotomy today, the disconnect between our current climate and wanting to connect on a deeper level, person to person. But I leave you with these 3 ways to increase connectivity with your patients as people: compassion, appreciation, and vulnerability. These things are within our control. We cannot restructure the entire healthcare system today, but we can change the way that we are interacting with the patients around us and with the people that are helping us to take care of those patients. I'm so glad that the internet between us brought us together and gave me the opportunity to connect with you about this topic today. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. As for now, this PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.